It's Thursday. It's actually Thursday. This is actually coming out on a Thursday. This is the first Thursday that's come out on a Thursday, I think in 2 months. That's a pretty exciting thing. It's almost gotten to a point now where Linux Thursday is more likely not Thursday than Thursday. Even over anyway. It's delightful. This is Linux Thursday. James Mason, one of the big dudes over at Linux Fest Northwest. How you doing, my friend? You had a finger up. A finger up is the universal sign for I have a thing in my finger. What's up?
It's not Thursday.
Well, don't ruin the movie magic here, man. It's coming out on Thursday. We're recording this on Wednesday. All right, so technically this isn't being recorded on a Thursday, but we're gonna pretend like it is. It's better that way. All right. For those of you new around here, and there's a lot of you, we take questions mostly over on the Patreons, and people ask us questions, something Linuxy, something open sourcey or free software-y, and then we attempt to answer it. Today's really cool because we have James with us from Linux Fest Northwest and SUSE and OpenSUSE, and he actually knows some technical things, so he may actually be able to provide what I like to call possibly correct answers, which is a new thing for this show. So we'll see how that goes.
Very possibly.
Very possibly. Let's talk about Linux Fest. Let's talk a little
Yay!
bit about Linux Fest because let's just get this right out of the way up front. April 26th through 28th in 2019. So this next year. So that's what, 4 months away? A little over 4 months?
It's coming up. Months away.
Yeah.
5 months.
It's in Bellingham, Washington, which, if you've never been to Bellingham, it's adorable. It's like Washington State's most adorable city. It's fantastic. It has good burger places, good donut places. It's wonderful. This guy, along with a big crew of volunteers, put the show together. It is my favorite show. It's worth going to. James, what do people need to know right now about it? What's going on?
Right now, we have our call for papers open. And
what does that
our call
mean?
for papers is where the magic starts to happen for Linux Fest. This is you out there in the audience, and you in particular, Brian. Thank you for yours.
You're welcome.
Submitting proposals for doing a session at Linux Fest. You can do a short presentation, about 45 minutes. You could do a longer presentation. We have a couple rooms that have computers available if you want to do hands-on tutorials. We have a game room, and if you really want to go hog wild, and you can even run like a small mini conference at Linux Fest. Postgres US often comes out and does a mini conference. OpenSUSE has done a mini summit on site as well. We've had different groups do individual conferences. So get those proposals in. The more we get, the better the whole conference gets, and we get to pick. We'll pick out at the end of January which ones we like and put together a schedule of 80 sessions.
So people have got till the end of January to get them in.
Yes.
Okay.
They've got till the end of January, but sooner is better. We really like it because,
then you know what to plan for. You know, like how many options you got.
When you're on the other side of it and you're watching the stuff come in, and there's always a little bump when it starts, and then it gets really slow for a while, and then it does kind of a hockey thing at the end. And that slow period, that's a freaking outing period for session conference organizers.
Right?
It's like, oh my gosh.
We're not going to have a conference. It's not going to be here.
There's not going to be enough stuff. It's going to be crap.
I mean, like...
And we want it to be awesome.
London can do quite a few shows, but not a whole conference. That just doesn't work out very well. He gets tired.
He can't do 8 rooms at one time. So...
Well...
No, you can't.
Was that a challenge? Like was that... Was that a double dog dare? Okay.
You're an amazing guy, Brian, but I don't think you can actually put on like 10 presentations simultaneously.
I don't know. So last year I did, was it 4 or 5? In a day. It was 4. And that was intense. that was intense as it was. Why do we still call them call for papers? Like, if we're talking about people standing up in front of a room with a slide deck and talking, why is it a call for papers? Paper is never used in the process.
I don't know why it's called call for papers. There's probably some historic thing forever. We also call it call for submissions. and call
See,
for proposals.
those
Call it
both
whatever you
make
want.
sense.
I
Call
just
for
need you to go
papers.
over to lfnw.org and say, I want to present, and here's kind of
Do
what I'm
it.
thinking I want to present about.
Do it.
And we'll chew on that and see if we can make it happen.
Oh, it really is a good conference. If you're like kind of a new person to speaking at conferences, it's a good one to cut your teeth on too. I mean, it's not all just people that are brand new there, but it's like a very supportive crew. You know what I mean? Like people are supportive. If people are like a little nervous speaking and whatnot, most of the rooms, just so everyone can feel not too freaked out about it, are classrooms. It's just a classroom. And so you've, at most, like how many people are supposed to fit in that classroom before the fire code gets you shut down?
30, maybe 40 tops.
Right? So
most of the rooms.
So exactly. So you're not going to be in there with 1,000 people heckling you. It's going to be 30 or 40 at most. Awesome Linux nerds like you just talking about the same thing you're interested in. It's fantastic. Yep. So it kind of takes the stress away, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah,
it's a nice place to start.
We're co-located at Bellingham Technical College, and their information technology staff is a huge part of the volunteers.
Yeah.
The school there has built some new buildings recently, and that's where we host Linux Fest. So these are nice, comfortable, clean classrooms.
They're nice.
They're all air conditioned. They've got nice, quiet, sound deadening carpets, and we put in a blue microphone, and you're on an HDMI projector. So it's a nice, easy environment. So everyone in the audience is friendly. I mean, you're only going to get heckled if you're Brian or me.
Right. It's very limited. Yeah.
We do love new people. We love new people to come out and do something new and different and exciting. Yeah. We definitely always get some new people presenting, and we make an effort to put them up and let them, get a start and get a chance in a comfortable spot like ours before they go on to a harsher conference world.
Right. It, honestly, like it's a good conference to start at, but it's also kind of just a good conference to end at. I'm literally looking ahead at next year's conference lineup, and I don't know that I'm going to do any others. Like I was thinking it through, and I was thinking about this. If you're like a public speaker, what's like the most important thing beyond just getting to be camaraderie and hanging out with people who are like you? What's the most important thing for giving a presentation? It's how many people see it, right? Like, if you're trying to get your word out there about something, the stuff I've produced at Linux Fest Northwest has been viewed by way more people than anything I've ever produced on my own or at any other conference. In fact, the stuff that I've produced at Linux Fest Northwest have been viewed more times than every single Linux Foundation event keynote combined. So ergo, if you're looking at value of presenting at a place, just based on pure numbers, the most valuable bang for your buck is Linux Fest. Right? I mean, technically, that's the truth. I'm just going to posit that out there.
You're sweet.
Well, you know how it goes.
Despite you and your specialness bringing your OBS box and doing the whole week series there.
You guys have your own stuff set up.
We capture everybody else too.
Yeah.
We've had a YouTube channel going for a few years, and we've been doing slides. This year, we started an experiment last year, and we're continuing that on this year, and we're really excited about it. We're actually doing our own hardware. We're going to be doing video capture and audio capture, and producing all the rooms on OBS boxes.
That's so cool.
Open broadcast software.
Yeah.
And we'll be doing some live streaming this year, which we've never done before.
You guys are going to crush your network.
Like our whole own open source stack for doing the video.
Are you guys panicked about the network and the bandwidth yet?
No, not at all.
You think you can handle it?
Oh, the school's got redundant fiber connections. As long as you're on an Ethernet port, there's absolutely nothing to worry about.
It's glorious.
So last year we had not directly, but through presenters like you that were doing their own thing. We had 3 live streams going at some point and had no problems at all. So conference Wi-Fi is always a nightmare, and there's nothing you can do about that.
But if you're on
plugged into an Ethernet port, it's great.
That's awesome. Yeah, honestly, I've never really had problems there getting out. that works pretty good. Seriously, folks, it's worth checking out. And I don't think I'm going to hit any other conferences next year. We were really, I was really looking at it and I'm like, well, why? Like I like the other conferences. Don't get me wrong, Scale and I have thought about also hitting Ohio and a few others, but this is a good one. This is a pretty good one.
I'd love to go to some of the other Linux fests as well.
It's fun to do. Well, like one year I think I did 6 one year. Wow. And that was too many, I decided. Like that was enough. Like I'm good. Like 1 or 2 is kind of nice, but like Linux Fest feels, I don't know, like friends and family and nerds, and like you go to the expo hall and like half the time there's just kids running around. Like it feels like a nerdy computer club of old. You know what I mean? It's more like what you guys have, like your booths are friggin' folding tables where like you'll have like big companies like a Pogo or whatnot will show up and they'll set up their thing, and then right next to them will be like a guy with like a 3D printer playing with some stuff. And like I love that. Like
we try to
so good.
We try to strike a balance between, having nice booth space for our sponsors, giving them room, giving them nice pipe and drape, giving them enough space to spread out and do what they want to do like they would at any traditional conference. But yes, we also leave 75% of the floor space is for what we call community sponsors. And that's open source projects, educational projects, nonprofit groups that want to present and meet our audience too, which we're very clear about. This is not a corporate conference. This is a community and enthusiast conference. This is people who want to be there, who love open source, who love free software. And it's so cool. We have a lot of fun there.
It's so nice. I'm trying to remember, and I feel bad that I'm forgetting the specifics, but there was one distro community, and I don't remember if it was Fedora or Ubuntu, but I want to say it was one of the two. And when they showed up, the sign for their booth was a piece of paper taped to the front that just said who they were. And what their booth was 2 guys, and they had a series of laptops on the table. They had a 1 laptop per child laptop, and they had like an Asus netbook, and then they just had like a bunch of like random mismatched laptops. Not all of them were even running the distro that they were there representing. They literally just were like, well, this is fun. And they just brought it, put it on the table, and talked to people about it and played with it all weekend. It's like, that's just... And no, like you maybe give him a little hard time, like, it's not running Fedora, but everyone had fun. And that was... I love that. I love the environment.
We have a lot of fun with it. The people that come down to represent the distros, it varies a little year by year what you're going to see. So some years the Fedora booth has had like a band in the booth.
They did.
They're just like playing guitar, and they've had like video game stations and saying, look how nice stream plays here.
The Fedora booth did do that. They did.
Yeah, it's 1 laptop per child sitting on a table.
Fedora booth, was it Tux Racer? I want to say they had set up with like 4 like USB like Super Nintendo style controllers, and they're like, let's just play Tux Racer all weekend. I'm like, that's the best. I mean, you'd never see that at like the big, I don't want to use the word corporate-y, but corporate-y conferences. Like it's just chill and you can ask questions. Anyway, it's fantastic. Go to it. I'll be there. Other people. Have you guys... Has there been announcements yet of some of the other folks that'll be there? I don't know if I should speak out of turn, or if
we haven't done any announcements yet, because we will not formally accept any sessions till the end of January.
Okay.
Everybody gets their own chance.
Excellent.
Although I do think you're going to make it, Brian.
Here's the thing.
You're okay.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be at Linux Fest, whether or not they accept any sessions from me. In part because it's a great place to go, and in part because they have some of the best donuts in Western Washington, which is worth the trip for. And seriously, if there's enough people that come in to submit so many amazing sessions that I don't get to present at all, well, that's just kind of a win for everybody. I mean, I'll probably still record something there. It just might be a little more guerrilla. All right, let's get on to the questions here. First question is from Alex, and I picked this one to be first because I want to know what James thinks of this. If you had to bet, how many months would you give it until Microsoft buys Canonical? Go. James, representative of the OpenSUSE community, employee of SUSE Corporation. Is SUSE
My
Corporation
views
or
do
just
not
SUSE?
represent my company in any way.
Okay. We'll get that out of the way right now. Yes,
I
he's here as a man with opinions. Now,
I don't see Microsoft ever buying Canonical.
what?
Ever.
You're wrong. Oh, you're wrong.
I
It's
don't
totally
ever
gonna
see
happen.
Microsoft
Ooh,
buying
wait.
Canonical.
I gotta get this in the frame. I got a Linux Fest Northwest shirt on. I gotta put it in frame for a second. Look at that. Look at
That's
that.
a good-looking
It's a little
shirt.
penguin riding a bicycle in front of some mountains. All right. So you really don't see? Do you see Microsoft trying to buy Canonical? Like,
No,
like Canonical
they-
aside, do you think Microsoft would want to?
Well, I mean, they have. Rumor is they've negotiated with Shuttleworth in the past, but their price was their offer wasn't his price.
Do you
Now,
think they would ever get to a
if
point where there
Canonical goes
was?
public, it's a whole different ball game, and then you're talking about stock options and hostile takeovers and board decisions, and so that takes Mark out of the picture. But
Do you
I
think?
don't see that they'd buy it.
Do you think with IBM buying Red Hat, that ups the ante a little bit? Because there's not a lot of... Because, I mean, really, once you take Red Hat out of the equation, so Red Hat is no longer independent, right? They are part of IBM. So they're going to be pushing IBM stuff whether they want to or not. Like, IBM might still be really cool with Red Hat, but, you know, that's how that works. So then it's SUSE and Canonical left as the two big Linuxy companies that are in the I love containers and heart the cloud, right, business. So that's those two companies. Now, SUSE is getting sold off to EQT Partners. So in theory, they'll be kind of independent, but owned, at least for the time being, by an investment firm.
We will be an independent company.
Well, you know how this works.
By an investor.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So that means that's happening over there. And in theory, EQT then and SUSE could then sell off further, which, you know, isn't out of the question, but that means there's only two regardless. So if you're Microsoft and you're looking around, and you're Oracle and you're looking around, and a couple of other companies, I could see those two companies being kind of grabbed really fast. You know what I mean? I mean, they're the two remaining ones. I don't see Canonical remaining independent in the current market, where Mark Shuttleworth is really pushing the cloudy stuff. And that's what IBM bought Red Hat for, right? So why wouldn't they? I mean, especially with the Azure changes that are happening over at Microsoft, I would just see Microsoft come in and just go whole hog and be like, yeah, Shuttleworth, come on over, dibs, you're ours now.
I don't know, because the Microsoft customer is not the same as the Canonical customer. I mean, Microsoft's business is big enterprise business. They're not making any money on Windows desktops and those little boxes. That's not where they're making their money. Their big money is enterprise subscriptions, big deployments of Windows, big customers on Azure. That's where they make all their money.
And then Canonical's just not making money.
Those customers aren't running Ubuntu. I mean, let's face it. I mean, you got some businesses that'll start on Ubuntu server, but realistically,
they move off onto to RHEL or SLES or something else later. Sure.
I mean, let's remember that Microsoft has given out $16 million worth of SLES licenses historically.
Is that what the number's up to now?
Something like that. Well, they don't do it anymore, but they did.
That was cool.
You know, they've got a good relationship with a lot of different distros on Azure.
Yeah.
You know, we're able to kind of work cooperatively and get product up quickly, but Canonical is a different ballgame there. I think Canonical is more name brand, and I hate to say it, but most of their audience is still more consumer, and it shows in their revenue stream and their profit margins.
It does, yeah.
They're not making a lot of money. They have a lot of mind share, and people kind of know the name and know the brand, but it's not something that Fortune 500 businesses are going to, stake their claim on. It's not something that they're going to run SAP HANA on. It's not something they're going to run their SQL Server on.
I don't know that that's true. Do you remember a couple of years back, I want to say this was about 3 years ago, there was a LinuxCon North America, back when the Linux Foundation still produced a conference with that was called LinuxCon, before they took Linux out of the name. And at that conference, IBM was unveiling their new, not supercomputer, but their new high performance mainframe line, their IBM One line. And that IBM One line ran a couple different Linux distributions, right? And SUSE was one of them. But the one they chose to showcase at the conference, during the keynotes, during the demos, was Ubuntu. And I remember at the time I was at SUSE at the time and working on the marketing side of things, and I remember going to the IBM folks like, what? Like,
that was buddy stuff from the C-suite.
But that's the thing, right?
I tell you, I think Canonical would get bought in a heartbeat if they went public, but I don't think it'd be Microsoft.
Who do you think would
I say watch out for Google.
You think Google would grab a bunch?
Everything they're doing internally is either Ubuntu based or Debian based.
But they're also going Fuchsia, right?
Here's an easy buy of a bunch of developers that are familiar with the technologies they want to use, familiar with Kubernetes, familiar with containers, familiar with the cloud stuff. That's just like, hey, come and play in our sandbox.
How freaked out would most Ubuntu users, like the nerdy ones, be if it got bought by Google? Holy heavens, people would lose their mind.
I think the day that happened, we'd add new download servers for Leap.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. At the day that happens, Debian, Elementary, OpenSUSE, and a whole lot of them just will have this instantaneous 15% spike across the board, everything. Yeah. See, okay, my answer, Alex, I think it'll be by the end of next year. I don't think it's going to be quickly, because I think my friend James here is half right. I think that it'll happen, but it won't happen until Canonical goes public. I don't think Canonical is going to announce anything to go public until February, March. I think they'll go public around the end of summer, and I think that they'll be bought out or at least majority owned by Microsoft by year's end. That's what I would guess. If I had to guess, because if I'm Microsoft, I want to get them, and I want to get them cheap. If I'm Canonical and if I'm Mark Shuttleworth, I want to go public because that looks fun, and he can talk about how he did a successful IPO, and then whatever Mark Shuttleworth does after this, which may or may not include being a supervillain in space on a platform shooting lasers at people, will look good on it. Basically, his cover letter is going to look great at that point. I've been to space, I've sold multiple companies, I IPO'd Canonical, all that sort of thing. I think that's what he's going to do, and then I think Microsoft's going to buy it. I don't see it happening any other way, unless Oracle comes in and buys it. I could easily see Oracle doing the exact same move.
Yeah, I mean, Oracle's so far down the chain with Unbreakable Linux being based on CentOS.
But that's the thing.
That's a shift to gears.
IBM buying Red Hat, Oracle is going to be getting antsy. I guarantee you that crazy Larry Ellison is sitting down there in his slippers-only office going, oh no, and he's going to want to change something. Larry just is not going to put up with that. So he's going to want to shift, and if it's either going to be to SUSE or it's going to be to Ubuntu for the base. So, I mean, because Red Hat and CentOS and Fedora are out of the question, because that's IBM now, right? So you don't touch Big Blue if you're Oracle. You stay on your side of the fence and you grab one of the two independents. And with SUSE changing hands recently, I would say that it becomes a much more complicated endeavor to grab them. So I would just grab Canonical. I would just come in with my Crazy Larry stack of money and plop them down on the tape. Does anyone call him Crazy Larry still? Or is that like, because you know what I mean?
Executives at Amazon.
All right, moving on. Alex, I think that's a good question. First sponsor of this glorious episode is Pogo Linux, who also helped make Linux Fest Northwest possible. How many years has Pogo Linux been at Linux Fest Northwest, James Mason?
It will be 20 years, this 20th anniversary.
20
years.
Holy heavens. There's huge percentages of the audience of this show that aren't even that old yet. And Pogo Linux has been there helping make that conference possible the whole time. They were there the first year I went.
There were servers 20 years ago.
I love, by the way, if you ever do go to Linux Fest Northwest, go by the Pogo Linux booth and start talking to them about old hard drives and old storage servers. It is the best. Like Paul from Pogo especially, his eyes light up and he'll just start talking about how awesome it was when you were cramming 50 different spinning platters so that you could get a couple 100 megabytes of storage. Like, it's just fun to talk to them about that sort of thing. Anyway, they make big servers, pogolinux.com. All right, Bradley asks, reviews for the PlayStation Classic are not very good. Sony apparently used an open source emulator to put in the device without much optimization. Besides the fact that Sony would be the first one to request a DMCA takedown on ROM sites, what is your take on it? So I really like the little, the mini consoles that get released. I think that's adorable. Like, I just like them a lot. It's sort of, they're almost as cool as like the little mini like arcades that are about yay big. Like, I just love those sorts of things. But yeah, the reviews for the PlayStation Classic aren't that great. And it's based on PSCX, or I believe something like that. It's a really old PlayStation emulator. And yeah, no, it's not great. In fact, I don't know. Have you looked at this much, James?
No.
All right. So, Lazy Game Review actually looked at the PlayStation Classic and thought, well, this isn't very good. So he went and took a Raspberry Pi and bought a 3D printed Raspberry Pi case that's shaped like a PlayStation 1. And he did his review of his PlayStation Classic. And it was like, it works like way better than an actual PlayStation Classic, costs way less, and you can do more with it, and it's faster and it's more optimized. And you can run other console things on it. So I don't know. I think it's great that companies do that sort of thing. I think that, yeah, Sony kind of screwed the pooch on exactly what they put in that one. But
kids,
what are you gonna do?
Save your money for the Atari FCS. It's going to have an open source Linux-based gaming sandbox on the device.
Yeah, that one is kind of, if it ever ships. But hey, I mean, did you see the Atari Watch isn't shipping? That's a bummer. Did you see that little one? It wasn't.
No.
It was basically just a 2600 on your wrist. I mean, it wasn't a 2600, but it had a little like Pong. You could play Pong on your wrist, and that really spoke to me, right? But so that one got canceled, and I was really bummed about that. So I'm hopeful that the new VCS really ships, because it's just a Linux computer in a really nice wood grain styled Atari 2600 inspired case. And I want that in all the rooms of my house.
Yeah, my fingers and my Indiegogo account are crossed that
Right?
it will actually deliver.
Yeah, no, that's one of the few ones that I plopped down on the crowdfunding for. There have been ones that I've really regretted not crowdfunding. Like, what was the Clockwork? You got one of those guys, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Explain the Clockwork to people, because they need to know about this.
It looks like a Game Boy.
It does.
But it's a Raspberry Pi that's a little bit customized, and an Arduino board, and a screen, and a battery that are just modularly set up in these little like model, pop them off the sprue plastic
like
cases.
You can take the controller part off and put something else on there, assuming you have a different compatible thing, and so it's modular.
Yeah, it's totally modular.
Totally cool.
They've done a couple add-ons. They made a case that's Lego compatible on the back, so you can like snap things onto it.
Of course you want to do that. Oh my heavens.
They've got printable design files online, and I know they just released an upgraded motherboard.
How
for
does it play? How does it play? Like what have you played on there so far?
I've done a little emulation, Atari emulation.
A little Atari, like 2600 Atari? Yeah. See, that's
a little
the way to
Breakout,
go.
a little Tetris, yeah.
Oh man, that's glorious.
It's been great for the old stuff. Some of the newer things, it's just, it's Raspberry Pi based, so there are some limitations you're going to hit. But in general, it's just a Linux box running Raspberry Pi with a nice front end. And they're very plain about it. You can contribute to the repos.
Like this is a Pi 2, right? And I mean, I've got this one runs, everything up through like Neo Geo era of emulation really, really well. And I've got like a couple of Pi Zero based devices. And yeah, it's a little more limiting, but you can still run up through like Super Nintendo era and Genesis era, no problem. So that means you can get the Atari and everything else, and a nice Commodore 64 emulator. Oh,
they just
so cool.
Clockwork just made a new board for it, and I think it's like $50, and it's a drop-in replacement for the board that's in the original, or you can use it separately. And now they added an HDMI out. They hadn't put the connector. So they added the HDMI out and bumped up the RAM. It's a nice little board, even if you were just using it as a single board computer. But the idea that you can also then, replace the board in your Clockwork Pi with something that's been upgraded, they're following through. It's great.
I think that's fantastic. I really regret not having grabbed one of those early on, because now I'm in a queue.
And it totally looks like a Game Boy.
It totally does. It totally looks
so
great.
Cute.
There actually is a guy out there, or a person, I suppose. I just assumed it was a guy. I want to say they have like an Etsy page or something where you can buy. They find old Game Boy cases, gut it out, put a nice new screen in it, use the original buttons as much as they could, like drill extra holes and put in extra buttons, and then put like a Pi in there. So you've got a real original Game Boy, only that can run Neo Geo games if you want. Which is a little bit blasphemous to me, but also a little bit awesome. So I like it. Okay. So PlayStation Classic, I'm not going to get one because I have 11,000 Raspberry Pis, and I'll just 3D print myself a case to go with it. So I don't know. But then again, I'm glad Sony made it, because that's cool.
You could put it right next to your NES case and your Commodore 64 case.
Right. Just James, not this James, different James, asks, the GNOME and GTK community has a reputation of being quite hostile to anyone working outside of their core vision. In your experience, is this reputation deserved, or is it something people just say? I have a personal feeling on this one. I want to hear James's personal feeling. Again, this does not necessarily represent the opinions of SUSE or OpenSUSE.
GTK has changed along with GNOME
a lot,
and they've been pretty plain about that GTK is going to rev with pretty much every version of GNOME, and that it's there for the core applications. And the flip side of that is they do have a vision, and they're kind of following through about it.
They do.
You see the same kind of thing in elementary OS with Pantheon, that their SDKs are revving to as they're doing it, and their design guidelines are very strict, and they have a very strong vision. It's kind of a little tighter community, and a little bit a narrower audience right now, at least. And so people don't seem to gripe about it, and I don't really know. I think maybe just because GNOME has such a long history and is on so many distros.
So many things are based on GNOME that there's a lot more people to be able to complain. Do I think it's deserved? No. Honestly, I don't. Can they be a little difficult to work with sometimes? Yes. Just like every community can. I mean, so when I was on the board at OpenSUSE, there was this one time, and I've talked about this one before, so I feel like I could talk about it again. There was this one time that Canonical and Ubuntu reached out to us to work with us around Snappy, their package management, right? So they reached out to us. We didn't get back to them right away. Like about a week goes by before we had like a response for them, right? And this was kind of early on in those days. Between that period of time, Canonical just decided to go ahead and announce that they were working with us officially. And we hadn't even really gotten back to them yet. And me and a few other people related to OpenSUSE kind of got grumpy with them about that. From Canonical and Ubuntu's perspective, OpenSUSE was being really difficult to work with. From OpenSUSE's perspective, Canonical and Ubuntu was being really difficult to work with. The reality is, OpenSUSE was just thinking about things, and Canonical really wanted to move fast, and they were just being impatient. Neither were being mean. Neither were being really all that difficult. It's just, you get a big thing with lots of people, and everyone's going to have gripes. Honestly, I think I've seen more, in my opinion, realistic gripes about working with the Qt community and the KDE community than with the GNOME community. And even then, it's a bit of a stretch because I really haven't seen actual big problems that have shut down everything and made it impossible. It's sort of like when Shuttleworth and Canonical and Ubuntu felt like they had to do Unity because GNOME was just so hard to work with. No, they weren't that hard to work with. The GNOME folks just had opinions, and Canonical just had some more opinions, and they weren't exactly in line, so they felt like it was hard to work with each other.
If you think it's hard to work with the desktop toolkits, submit a kernel patch.
Yes. Aldo asks, so we stated in the past that a closed source developer company is not necessarily evil. Might be not. But what about those who do a portion of their business with open source, but their main/core products are closed source? How would you qualify those on a scale of evil to not at all evil, I'm supposing? How would you classify that? Let's speak purely hypothetically here. Let's not name names because one of us could get in trouble for things like that, and one of us doesn't care. So let's just not name names. But hypothetically, let's say there's a company out there that has one product that's closed source, but also does some workings with open source projects and maybe contributes to one or two of them and has a couple of open source things. Where do they sit on the morality spectrum? I know, right? I actually think this is an interesting question because this does affect like 80% of companies.
Part of that is accepting change, right? And some of us are better about accepting change than others are. Some of us are more understanding of change. The thing with a closed source application is it's not necessarily easy to open source it.
That is totally true.
If you have licensed other proprietary software, if you're using other proprietary add-ons, if you've got a bunch of packages that are actually coming from different places and different sources, and you've got license terms and copyright terms and patents and things, it's not necessarily easy to unravel that and just open source something.
It's really
it can
true.
Be kind of a mess.
It can be a total mess. It's sort of like a lot of the video games, like from Blizzard and whatnot, used, I want to say they used Blink as their video playback engine or something like that. And they used closed source engines. And so what are you going to do? You're just kind of stuck.
I'll go out on a limb here again and name a few names. And I'll say, Microsoft is doing a lot of open source stuff. Is Windows Server going to be open source? I probably never. I don't know. Maybe eventually. Who knows? But you look at their new products and the new services, and they're doing a lot more stuff in open source. They're hiring a lot of open source developers.
Yeah.
Last week at AWS, Amazon announced a new virtualization engine called Firecracker, and it's the first time that they've ever open sourced a big piece of their infrastructure. And they're doing it in an open source project. They're accepting community contributions. They're working upstream and using kind of standards. And that's
cool.
That's
a big deal.
Things may actually be getting better.
Those sorts of things should be praised, like we should praise those sorts of things. Like it's sort of like many years ago, Adobe open sourced some of their UI toolkits. And it was like, yes, that's awesome. And at the time, I shouted from the rooftops, we should praise Adobe for doing that. And they followed it up by not releasing anything else as open source ever again.
You gotta, as an optimist, I want to look at the new. I want to look at the trends.
Yeah.
And I'm going to understand and accept that big closed source projects can't necessarily be easily open sourced, and things take time.
Did you see this happened? What was it? Yesterday, the Microsoft's open sourcing WinForms and the presentation stuff. So for doing all the GUI development in .NET, they're open sourcing all that stuff, which is wicked cool. And then I went in and checked the GitHub repository for it. And it specifically says, if you're interested in making this work on other platforms, yeah, we're not going to accept those patches. I read that and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Part of me is like, that's fine. You know, it's their project. They get to determine where they want to put their focus and their time, and any additional code they add adds additional testing work for them. I totally get it. On the flip side, screw that. I want it for a bunch of platforms. So
I don't know. Do you really want WinForms apps running on your Linux desktop?
Well, there it is. Either I want them running on my Linux desktop, or I might as well not have the darn thing exist at all, right? So if you have a piece of code, like Microsoft's been releasing a lot of open source code, but a lot of times it's either under a license that you can't really use it with a lot of like copyleft stuff, or it's in such a way where it's a good license, but you know, they're saying flat out, if you want to work on this on Linux, don't even bother submitting patches. We're not going to accept them.
Well,
so
WinForms
what do you do?
WinForms is weird. I haven't even thought about WinForms since I worked on Visual Basic.
I know, so right? It has changed.
Like,
yeah, I agree, but it's just, I don't know. It rubs me the wrong way. Darn it! I don't know really what to think of all of that. I don't know. It just doesn't feel... Anyway, yes. I think that there is a big, hearty middle ground of evil and not evilness, Aldo. I don't know really what to say. The world is not black or white. It is many shades of gray, much as my video is right now. The only thing that's purely black and white is... Heinz Doofenshmirtz, where's he at? Heinz Doofenshmirtz back there. He's black and white because he's dressed like a pharmacist. Stuart asks, hypothetical. All right, good. We need to get some hypothetical things going right now. You arrive at your new Antarctic home amongst the penguins after being welcomed by Tux himself, like you do. You discover the furnace is dead. Well, that can be a problem in the Antarctic, I would say. Fortunately, you foresaw that this could happen. What retro computer /server /supercomputer did you bring with you? And what program /game /computation do you run on it to heat your new home? That's a pretty good question. I mean, honestly, you got to bring a nice hot running rig with you. You know what I would bring with me? Oh, I'm trying to think back through what the hottest laptop I've ever had was. Because if you can't heat the whole of your home, at least keep yourself warm, right? Yep. So find someone of those hot laptops. Honestly, some of the earlier MacBook Pros ran crazy hot. Like burn the hair off your legs hot. I would get one of those. Put it on those little vented things that make it sit up off your leg a little bit, so that way you can feel the heat, but it doesn't actually third-degree burn your legs, and you don't have to have your whole home, which I'm assuming doesn't have a lot of ventilation because you're in the Antarctic, doesn't smell like burning human hair. But I would go with an old MacBook Pro, especially if it's running Gentoo. Compile your own thing of Gentoo nonstop, and because from my last experience, when I tried to run versions of Linux on an old MacBook Pro, man, it did not throttle the CPU when it needed to. So that's what I would do. It would keep me personally in my sphere very toasty and warm. James?
Yeah, I'm not bringing any big old classic hardware supercomputers to the Antarctic. I mean, I don't want my igloo to melt around me. I agree with you. I just want to keep me and my lap warm.
Yeah.
So,
a good hot running laptop with like all of like the fans. Just disable them.
I think I want like one of the fanless Intel NUC kind of knockoffs.
Oh, those do get kind of warm. Yeah.
With the heat sinks on the top, like they make for running PF sensors like that. I want one of those for my feet.
Ooh.
Running a Minecraft server. And then a laptop with Intel graphics, so it has to do all the rendering and software in my lap. And then I just play Minecraft.
I'm liking where you're going on that. Warm. Oh, you know, I had a first generation Xbox, the very first one. Man, that sucker was hot. It just billowed out hot air. I'd run that one. Then again, I did have it modded, so I probably broke something in it. That's the way I'd go, Stuart. But man, there's a lot of really hot running consoles and tablets and whatnot that you could bring with you. That's a really good idea. 2 birds with 1 stone. Who needs a furnace? Karsten asks, okay, here's a gadget question. I ordered a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus and wanted to buy a Noodle Pi set with a keyboard. The Noodle Pi is not available anymore. Do you know something similar? There are some things similar.
So sad.
It is so sad. So, okay. So the Noodle Pi side of things. So the Noodle Pi is sort of, it's not like it's dead. For those of you who don't know the Noodle Pi, it is literally, it's something you can put together yourself from a kit that this guy will send you. This guy's cool. He sent me like everything related to the Noodle Pi for me to play with. And it's so much fun. But it's basically just a little 3.5-inch screen. And inside of this little custom 3D printed case he packs everything into it, battery, all of it, and a Raspberry Pi Zero. So it is a PDA. It's not a phone. There's no cell phone chip in it. It's a PDA. It's got Wi-Fi and what on it, and he's got it with this little like docking system, so you can slide on clips for like little Bluetooth keyboards and game controllers and whatnot. So it becomes a 3D printed modular, funky 3.5-inch display PDA. Very, very cool. The screen he was using got end of lifed. So he has to rework the case a little bit so he can fit in a slightly different display. So that's the only problem there. Honestly, I would potentially wait for that. However, there is another project coming along that does look kind of cool, and I don't think they've shipped or announced yet that I know of. It is the Pi-ocket. If you follow them, they basically took, look that one up, a Pi-ocket. And I think the Pi is like with a 1 or something like that. But if you look that one up, it's basically a Raspberry Pi Zero inside of like a super miniaturized Game Boy, like little itty bitty tiny thing, almost keychain sized, with a D-pad and 2 buttons on it and a little itty bitty screen. Adorable. So if you need to have some Game Boy gaming on the go and you're willing to hold your thumbs psychotically close together, look into that one. I don't know if they've announced orders or whatnot for it, but I have talked with them and it does seem like a real thing that's happening. So check that one out. That would be the best bet. All the really great stuff ends up dying, like the Pocket Chip. That would be a great one. Dead. Yeah. I can't even get the people who were running the company to talk to me anymore, so I don't even know about that. No.
Well, I mean, the Pi 3 though has Bluetooth, so you could get any little Bluetooth keyboard. Yeah. Find one that's comfortable. Find one that works for you, and then, go down to your local makerspace and print a bracket for it.
So like this is a Pi 3 that I put in the case, and this is Element 14 did a no. Did Element 14 put this together? Maybe. I don't remember which of the makery companies did the design for this one. I feel bad now. But this is essentially, it's a Pi 3 with a screen put in a Game Boy style case, but there are shells out there. If you go to like Thingiverse or anything like that, there are shells out there that have a space for a screen and like a little like mini like Bluetooth or wireless mini keyboard instead of making this game like, and that absolutely totally works. I mean, it's very DIY, but that makes it cooler because then nobody has one quite like yours. Yep. That's the way I'd go. Or like you wait for like the Librem 5 to ship, and then you have a phone that's more of a full-fledged Linux computer, but that's more expensive. That's not like in the cheap range of I'm working with a Raspberry Pi. So I don't know. That'd be the way to go. But yeah, the Noodle Pi, if it starts shipping again, I love that thing. It is the stupidest device, and it's the best. Like there's no buttons on it at all other than the power switch. And it's this little tiny thing. I mean, if you give it to anyone other than a nerd, it's useless. But for a nerd, it's like he literally made a metal watch strap, so I could slide the damn thing onto my watch, so I could walk around and play Doom on my watch, like the good Lord intended. I love that, and hopefully more people build that sort of thing. I love the idea of like, like Etsy style, like entrepreneurs, except for custom weirdo hardware. You know, I love that. I love that so much. I want to collect all of them. Oh, hey, let's mention Purism real quick. They also help make this show possible. If you go to Purism's website, puri.sum, you can get non.com domain names always throw me off. Like, I want to sing the Expedia.com thing every time I see .com, and when people don't have a .com, I got .sum, and it doesn't flow quite the same. It drives me crazy. But if you go to Purism's website, what they sell is amazing. Hardware kill switches, free software foundation approved operating system, and they're making a friggin' phone with kill switches where the baseband is separated from the CPU and memory space, so this baseband can't access the RAM contents. It's pretty much, as far as I know, the first phone that does it that way, and it's friggin' brilliant. I can't think of another phone that's ever done that. Because normally they do the baseband on the CPU, or the baseband as part of the system on a board for these little tiny phones, like all the Android phones. So the baseband, that it has tons of closed source stuff by design, and you cannot open it up easily, at least not in the current climate, has then direct access to the memory. So you can't really have real security. The Purism folks separated it out. So basically they send messages to the baseband and tell it to do things on their behalf and get data back, but it's separate from the RAM. I feel like everyone needs to do that. Like, Purism is one of those companies that they do things, and I look at it and I go, everyone should copy them. And I know that would potentially hurt their business, but I still think that's how the world should be. I feel like every company needs to be doing hardware kill switches and separating out basebands and all that sort of thing. Anyway, Purism's website, go there. It's fantastic. Gareth asks, you've made your stance on Internet of Things pretty clear in the past. Crockpot. If you had to receive one IoT device this Christmas as a gift, what would you choose? Well, honestly, the one I would choose would be the Crockpot, and I already have one, thanks to him and the conference that gave it to me half as a joke. So, can I talk to you about that Crockpot briefly?
No, you can't.
How much dead space before you say, go ahead, Brian? Talked about the crock. I'm going to talk about the Crockpot. Okay.
Go ahead, you go ahead and talk about the Crockpot, and then I will blow your mind.
Okay, then you can blow my mind. So I've made fun of this Crockpot repeatedly because it's an internet-connected Crockpot that you can actually use like an iOS or Android phone to control your Crockpot from anywhere in the world, right? And it's got Wi-Fi and everything like that. It's a perfectly good Crockpot. I made fun of it for years, put it in presentations, and then I go up to Linux Fest. Oh, what do? In front of friggin' everybody, they come up to me and present me with the friggin' Crockpot. It was very, very entertaining for me. So I'm actually using that Crockpot right now today. There's stuff cooking up in it right now. It's a fantastic Crockpot. Had a hell of a time hacking into that thing. It is a cool Crockpot. But breaking into that thing to make it do, the dances I want to make it do has been extremely challenging. I've reached out to the company to try and get information about how I can open it up. Can I get the source code for it, please, for the various open source components that I'm sure are in there? Oh, yeah. Stonewalled to death on that one. But I would love to be able to get to a point where I can really run some crazy weird stuff on that Crockpot. What were you going to blow my mind with there, James?
The Instant Pot Smart.
Wait, what?
You think your Crockpot is dangerous? Try connecting a pressure cooker.
They make one that's internet connected?
Oh, yes.
You're joking. No one would be that reckless with humanity. Really?
Oh, yes.
Really?
Really?
There's like a Wi-Fi internet-connected pressure cooker?
You can get Wi-Fi or Bluetooth.
Oh. So Gareth, to answer your question, what I would get from me is very different than what I would get for my family member who I no longer like. I would get them the pressure cooker, and I would pair it with my phone at home before I give it to them, and I'd reseal it nicely in the box. This is trending very dangerously down terrorism territory, isn't it? What I would do is buy everyone one of those bears that spy on them. those little nanny cam bears. That's what I would do. Yeah. What would you go with if you could get an You see, you like the home automation stuff. You
I love
dabble
the
in
home
it.
automation stuff, and I have a lot of fun home automation
What
stuff.
would be the best? Like the one thing, whether you've got it or not, like if a piece of home automation or IoT-ness, and don't say Alexa, but anything else, like what would you get? What would be the thing?
My stuff is super boring. I just want more of the GE Z-Wave outlets.
Oh,
That's
okay.
all.
That's
Just more outlets.
That's reasonable. You just want mega corporations and people on the internet to control your electricity. No, I get that.
Mega corporations and the internet cannot control my electricity. My Z-Wave outlets, sir, are connected to a completely open source home automation hub that's not on the internet.
What's the hub you're using?
I am using, and I can't even remember the name of it right now.
That's okay. You've told me before, and I can't remember it either.
Home
That's why I
Assistant.
asked. What was it called? Home Assistant?
Home Assistant.
Home Assistant. Okay.
It's open source. It's written in Python. They do a couple of nice distribution versions of it as a container. It's running right now on a Raspberry Pi, and it's doing everything the closed source stuff did, but easier to customize.
Well, that's pretty cool, though. So that's the way I'd go, Gareth. Either way, I mean, we're all cruising towards complete and ultimate disaster anyway. You know, might as well buy into it. Put a pressure cooker in your house that Jeff Bezos can control with his own voice from his bathroom. There is nothing that could go wrong. Nothing at all. Mark asks, I'm feeling rather nostalgic. Just looked over at my 386 and 686 computers. I love it when people use the word 686. I haven't, like, the 586 and 686 like monikers, I just don't hear much anymore. And wondered if there are any projects, current or deprecated, for alternate operating systems suitable for such old hardware. Currently, they are both just running DOS, and the 686 has Windows 3.11. Really? You have a 686 with Windows 3.11? That thing must scream. If you don't know of any other operating systems for these, then what old versions of Linux would you recommend I try? Okay. First, FreeDOS. FreeDOS will run on some of those old things, especially on that 686. I would get FreeDOS on there because then at least you can be like, man, I love my free software, even if I'm just running DOS, right? Then you can run great DOS games on top of that. So, you know, with your Sound Blaster cards and everything else, you can run on top of FreeDOS. And then at least you can feel like that little extra good free softwareiness, that part of your soul that needs that, you know? That's where I'd start with. Otherwise, I'd go with, and this is the way I would fly. If on the 386, I would put a version of Linux that's wicked old. I would not bother with any 386 compatible more modern systems because, I mean, most of the Linux kernel cut off 386 support 4 years ago, I want to say, something like that. So regardless, you got to go back quite a few years. And even then, Ubuntu never had a 386 build to my knowledge that worked on it. You always needed Pentiums as far as I could remember. I might be wrong on that. But I would go back to like Slackware. I'd go early Slackware, or I'd find an image for a boot root set of floppies. Those, you can find them around somewhere. For those of you who haven't ever boot rooted, you haven't lived, man. So get that 386, put 2 floppy disks in it, put the boot disk in one and a root disk in another. If you don't know how to boot root works, basically a boot floppy boots it all up, and you don't even get to an operating system yet. Then you pull it out and you stick in the root floppy, and then it loads up the root environment along with a handful of GNU tools. And that was the very, very first distribution of Linux that ever existed. It'll run great on pretty much any old 386. Support extremely few number of devices like Ethernet cards and whatnot. Almost nothing, because we didn't get actual Unix sockets until a little bit later on, which means there was no networking and we did not have X11. So but a boot root, that's what I would do, because if you got something that old, why not go fully nostalgic? Just give into it, right? I don't know. That's what I'd do. What would you do, James? You got a 386. What do you do?
I think you're right on the money for the 386. I think that's got to go FreeDOS.
Yeah. FreeDOS.
And DOS games, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't expect to be connected to anything anyway.
Right? Why not just love it like that? Yeah.
For the 686, I mean, that's probably like what, a Cyrix. I think they're the only ones that actually use the
Use that
686
moniker,
name.
yeah.
But that should work even with current kernels.
As long as it's
Everything's
a
not going to be
32-bit.
fast, right? The kernel, yeah, you got a 32-bit kernel. You should be. I bet you run CDE on a modern Linux version 4 kernel.
Oh yeah.
And I bet that thing would not only boot but be pretty damn usable. Alternatively, is there a 32-bit version of Haiku?
Yes. Yes, there is a 32-bit version of Haiku. So that's another good way you could go. You know what actually might even be fun is go with the Amiga research operating systems. Not Morphos, but Eros. They've got an x86 version. I wonder if they run on an old Pentium, because then you could have this old machine and be like, it's antiquated, running old stuff. Well, what's it running? Well, this open source Amiga replacement. Just like the most random thing. Something that didn't even exist when that machine was in its prime. That's cool.
If that thing would boot up a modern kernel and run something lightweight, right? Like CDE or Window Maker, you could actually use it. Get some stuff done.
Get some motif
action
with
Haiku,
on it. You really could. Honestly, yeah. Grab a distro from that era. Honestly, why not? Why not? It's
just going to be old and busted and weird networking.
That's half the fun. Grab an old boxed image of SUSE Linux 6 dot whatever and throw it on there. Oh, go retro, man. Just give into it. Calvin asks, I am fed up with companies deciding they should be the masters of our computers, like John Deere and Chevy and whatnot, invoking DRM rules to prevent non-dealership repairs. Almost everything these days has a computer in it, whether it is beneficial or not. I even saw a commercial for a computerized hairdryer the other day. That is awesome. I'm pretty confident I've seen a dystopian horror movie where a hairdryer did something bad, and I need to remember which one that is. But these computers are all super proprietary and super locked down, even the ones with free software under the hood. What strategies do you employ to mitigate such curtailment of our freedoms? So I've been trying to work through this with my friggin' Crockpot. I know it's friggin' running Linux. I know it is. Which means it's probably got either an open source or a free software stack on it. I've been trying to get code for it for a while now. And it's like the TiVos. It's like the so many devices out there. It's like half of the stuff that, Canonical wants their, Ubuntu for things, devices, shipping, whatever, where you can't get to the code. So it doesn't really matter that it's free software because you can't flash the darn friggin' thing. It frustrates me. So what I do is I get a show, and I try and get as many thousands of people watching the show as possible, and then I vent about it a lot. And then I accomplish nothing, and then I have James on, and James will have a really good suggestion. James, you got anything for me?
Things that I'm the master of. I'll give up a lot to have an open source solution. I mean, I was really happy with my Wink Hub, but Home Assistant, it's a little more to configure, but it works great for me. And it gives me that good open source feeling. Right?
You're in control.
After this last scare with the routers, I turned my router into just an access point and put it behind a pfSense box.
I did the same thing. Yeah.
Running Nextcloud, in the closet, with all the devices connected to it. So things that I'm in charge of, that I'm the administrator for, that I'm the king of it, that's the way I go. Boy, though, if anybody else in the family has to use it, then I'm just looking for the simplest solution.
See, that's where most of us are.
My TV, I don't have a thing plugged into my TV. I have a TV that is built into a Roku.
It has the Roku built in, so you just use the Roku.
Built in.
Yeah.
And it gets Roku, and it does Roku-y things in the background. And it's like, you know what? My remote has 12 buttons on it, and nobody in the house complains.
You know what? It's funny. I have a TV with nothing built into it. I spent, and I kid you not, $15 extra to get a nothing in my TV versus the exact same brand with like a Roku and a few other things built in. And then I went and bought a Roku to stick into it. That's how I handled it. But then again, I feel like I'm fundamentally broken in that way. Like I can't handle it. Like my TV better be dumb. I'm a little bit mad that my TV doesn't have a dial on the front. Like that still bothers me a little bit. Yeah.
I don't know. I think this is one of those things where, again, you have to accept it and look for the best solution and do what you can and live with what you can. There's a Linux project to do cars, and it's completely open source. It's automotive grade Linux.
Yeah.
And there are cars out this model year that are running automotive grade Linux. Not for everything. They're not all the way down to the computer, but they're getting there.
Take the computers out. Why do you need those? Oh my gosh.
You still need
you don't need computers in your cars. You don't need computers in your cars.
Right now, they're using it for the entertainment stuff.
See, I'm
running
okay
the
with
radio and running,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It's when there's a computer. I had so many problems. So I had this Chrysler with a computer in there, and the computer started to malfunction in a way that is common in Chrysler in board computers, right? The computer started to malfunction, and it started feeding back inaccurate results, right? So it's like supposed to check and see if like the O2 sensors are doing a good job and if the spark plugs are fireinating properly, right? It's supposed to report all those things. And instead it was just reporting just random garbage. Car was working fine. Totally fine. The mechanical bits worked. And the computer was like, no, sorry, you're broken. So go in to get new tabs for the car. Oh, got to get an emissions test. Oh, the emissions test failed. Why did it fail? Because the computer's broken. Everything else functioned. So I had to replace the stinking computer, which I can't do. I literally had to go out to another company to get a computer programmed to my VIN to place it in there. I couldn't go in and fix it myself. I couldn't SSH into my computer and just dist upgrade that little bad boy. That drives me freaking crazy. I just want to rip it out entirely, but if you do that, it won't start. Not because the computer controls the ignition, but because it locks you out. The igniter says, hey computer, can I turn on now? And then it turns on. Calvin, the curtailment of our freedoms will continue until morale improves. That's how this is going to happen. We're screwed. Steve asks, what is the recommended way of dealing with a perfectly functional GPG key created in 2008? Should one make a newer one and sign it with the older one and somehow retire it, or just revoke the old GPG key? What about any old bits laying around on old drives that may be encrypted to that old relic key pair? What do you think, man? How do you handle old keys?
As long as the key is still big enough, why not keep using it?
Bingo. That's how
I've got like 10 email addresses on my GPG key.
Do you really?
And it's been compromised, and it's kind of this beautiful history of like where I've been and what I've done. Because that's my key.
That's
and
your key,
until
man.
something goes wrong, and my key is revocable.
Yeah.
And I have like a physical printout of the key just in case, sitting in a fireproof safe. But
do you really?
I do. I really do.
Adorable.
But yeah, as long as, until if you did like it's, like there was a while there where people were doing DSA keys and they were really small.
Yeah.
And that's like, okay, that's a problem. You got to replace that.
Yeah.
But as far as your GPG key,
you're fine.
No, you got that on public servers. You've got, as long as you're maintaining the privacy of your private key,
you're okay.
Then yeah.
Right,
roll with it.
I kind of think the same thing. But if you do have an old one that you have some reason that you want to get rid of, just, I don't know, man, go through everything, unencrypt it, copy it over somewhere, and create yourself a new key. That is part of the problem.
You don't have to delete it. You could unlist it from servers and revoke the key. You still have it on machines that are air gapped in case you got
data. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep it somewhere. Don't get rid of the key.
Oh
Whatever
no,
you do,
don't ever.
once you
No.
use a key, never get rid of it. Maybe never tell anyone about it ever again, but don't get rid of it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's with you for life. I mean, it's like getting a tattoo on your stomach. You just have to live with that. You're not going to get that sucker removed in any way. So
Yeah.
that's your stomach tattoo. So congratulations. I don't know. I have a real mixed.
Do you want to see my stomach touch? No, just kidding.
God no. I have a mixed feelings about GPG keys, and that for this exact reason is I kind of like, and I know there's good arguments against this, but I kind of prefer just usernames and passwords for the simple reason. I know. And every reason you're going to grimace when I say that is 100% accurate and valid. Like 100%. You will win that argument about security. No doubt. But once I have everything going with my own private key, I got to keep that key. I'm not going to remember that key. I'm going to have it written down or printed out or saved on a 5 1/4 floppy or something. I'm going to have something done where I have to keep it around. And that's where I start to go, well, I have to store my data and then I have to store my key separately. And that's where I start to, it's not convenient.
Yeah, but when you set up all your online accounts with Linux's badass in leet speak, you're just asking for somebody to hack you.
You really, really are. But yeah, there you go, Steve. Peter asks, Linux powers the top 500 supercomputers in the world, but do we know what they are actually used for? Who owns them? Should I reach for my tinfoil hat? Peter, the answer is yes. Bust out that tinfoil hat because they are being used for all sorts of things you don't want them to be used for. Some of them are really cool, doing really cool things. Most of them are compiling customer databases and moving customer relations around and tracking customer tracking trends and whatnot. That's what a lot of them do, and they do it rented out. Yes, they do. No. They do. What do you think they're all not being used for?
They're modeling the next nuclear bombs and
they are doing that
figuring
too.
out missile trajectories and.
Yes, they are doing that too. But a lot of them are doing stuff like very people softy things. You know what I mean? A lot of them are crunching just really big data sets about customers. I know that's the case because like look at and some of them are just winning at Jeopardy. I mean, so there's that. I mean, so they
calculating people's social value score in China.
Here's the thing: companies and governments are not going to shell out the hundreds of millions of dollars required for some of these big bad boys unless they're getting a really significant return on investment. So whatever it is, it's profitable in some way. That's just kind of how it is. So, are they spying on you? Yeah. Are they building a nuclear bomb virtually? Yeah. Are they patterning the weather? Yeah, and some of the things they're doing are kind of cool and awesome, and some of the things they're doing are terrifying. And mankind should have never been given this power. It should be taken away from us just like fire. We shouldn't have been allowed to have these things. We screwed up. That's just my feelings. But yes, it's cool that Linux dominates in that space. That still is a win, even if it's creepy. So you can at least feel good about that, right? Eugenio, all right. Whew. We got 2 questions left. We can do this. Hi, Brian and $ all uppercase guest. Nice job. I've always been a hobbyist programmer since I was a teenager in the 1990s, jumping from project to project, most of them very lame ones. Welcome to the club, my friend. I've learned C, Basic on a real ZX Spectrum, Quick Basic, and pre-.NET Visual Basic, some C++, Python, various Lisp dialects. Lately, though, I found myself much more comfortable in C than in any other language. Is feeling at home in a low-level language like that a sign that I'm getting old? Virtual hugs, Eugenio. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that Eugenio
Yeah.
is also having the urge to tell people to get off his lawn.
Yeah, no,
Just about now.
that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Once you're at the point where you can start applying for AARP, you'll just want to do it all in assembler. A macro assembler is acceptable, but an assembler nonetheless, or at least some inline assembly. You're doing something down at the hardware level, because if you can't get to ring 0, you might as well not get to any ring at all. That's what I say. Where do you feel comfortable, James? Like, so I mean, you've been coding for how many years now?
Oh, too many.
Like it's life, right? I mean, you breathe it after a while. Where do you feel comfortable when I say, James, let's do this cool project? What's the language that you start imagining that project in?
Ruby is my first love.
Oh, gosh, I like you and want to keep liking you. Come up with a different answer real quick. Ruby.
No, really, Ruby.
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of going the opposite direction of that whole getting older and going low level, though. I mean, you're kind of disproving what me and Eugenio are thinking on this one. You know what?
I also run like the plague when anyone says kernel.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
You know what, Eugenio? So, maybe listening to James here and thinking about myself, I went through a low-level phase. I think all developers do that, where they go through a phase where they want to be really low level, not C++, just C, or just assembly. I'm going to do some 68K assembly or whatever at this point. And then you grow out of that kind of at the same time. Like I don't code much anymore, but when I do, it's more usually in basic dialects now because I don't have to code in a professional setting. And so now I just do it more for fun. And James does stuff for Ruby because I assume James likes to hurt himself. So I suppose it's fine.
Is the only language for which the core maintainers consider developer joy.
What?
It is the only programming language for which one of the primary tenets of the core maintainers is ensuring developer joy.
What? Is that a real thing?
Real. It is a real thing.
I didn't know that. Do you feel joy when you code in Ruby?
I do.
Huh. Maybe I've misjudged Ruby.
I think so.
Maybe I need to give it another shot. Do they have a Ruby compiler for DOS?
I don't know, but I have to say I did start writing Ruby scripts on Windows servers.
Really?
A long time ago.
Dang. And your joy led you here.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. So, Eugenio, are you getting old? Yes, but your choice of language doesn't have anything to do with it. You're just old. This episode
all of
also
us Ruby devs still need those C developers behind the scenes.
Right? You can't not have C developers. We need someone in the kernel. It's brought to you in part by Lulzbot 3D printers. Where's my... Do I have it still? Yeah, right here. Boom. Yeah, baby. This little tiny mini Lulzbot that I call the Lulzbot Micro, it's printed by that guy. Go to the mail one day. This little thing just shows up. It just hangs out in the studio here with me. I love the Lulzbot 3D printers. They're the bestest in the worldest. Go to lulzbot.com. I love them.
I bet they run a lot of C.
I bet they really, really do. All right, last question before we head off into the sunset. Jason asks, so you have so far indirectly talked me into buying a System 76 laptop, running Nextcloud locally, and moving my stuff away from Dropbox and the Google Suite. I'll be buying a Librem 5 if it is ever made. From what I've seen, we should have it. And ventured into running Arch after I believe you called it Crazy Pants Awesome or something. What else you got for me? Okay, just to start with on this one. I'm sorry about conning you into running Arch. It is Crazy Pants Awesome, but my condolences on that one. Other decisions you made were golden. What else you got? I'm trying to think what's great out there. What's just fun going on right now that you can pick up? Honestly, the clockwork that we were talking about earlier, that's a cool one. That one looks pretty rad. I don't have one yet, but I really, 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 really want one. So that's pretty high up on the list. What else you got? What do you got, James? Is there something that if you were like, man, Linux nerd, you want this? You want this. Oh, by the way, Nextcloud, they have an announcement coming in a couple of days. It's awesome. Oh, no. It's awesome. And I can't tell you what it is. I can't do it. I got an email from me and James have a friend. His name is Yoss. He works over there and does the marketing. Good man. He does marketing over at Nextcloud, along with our good buddy Frank, who literally looks like Mr. Clean combined with a teddy bear, and he's German. It's the craziest thing. Look up Frank Karlichek if you want to know what we're talking about. He runs Nextcloud. Anyway, they got a hold of me yesterday or the day before with some news, and had a real hard time biting my lip about it. And so this is my way of venting about how it's cool without actually telling you what it is. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, other stuff.
I think it's just, what can you make a Raspberry Pi do for you?
That's like half of it, right? That's like half of living nowadays is what single board computer can you take that's cost like less than $40 that you want to turn either into your home PC console or your video player or your home file server or what? That is living, man. If the Noodle Pi is ever shipping again, and I hope it does, I really do recommend them. You can just pick up the kit on the cheap from them. It takes a little bit of work to assemble them, but I've put one of them together. It's easy. It's only really like 10 parts. It's just kind of hard to squeeze everything into this little tiny case. But I love those sorts of things, so that's what I go with. If you're not doing that, pick up old hardware. Really, really old hardware.
I think what you should get is a conference.
A conference? Like he should attend a conference, or he should buy his own conference?
I think you should go volunteer for a conference.
Ooh, that is kind of fun to do. Got any ideas of great conferences to volunteer? All right, that's all. All right, if you want more of this show, go to lunduke.com, because my website looks like garbage right now because half the images are broken because I haven't fixed everything after my server exploded. Seriously, the server host I was using, they had massive hardware failures. 5 days after I saw the craziest traffic spike I've ever seen. So I thought I'd killed my server with traffic. Turns out I was about to kill my server with traffic, but my host beat me to it and just took out everything. Oh my, fixing it, working on it, it's coming. And Nextcloud is part of that. Or head over to patreon.com/Brian Lunduke. You can read my stuff over at linuxjournal.com. The current one out is about supercomputers, which dovetails nicely into that question, which is just lots of fun. And then, we're doing, never mind. I can't tell you about that. That's a totally different thing. And go to linuxfestnorthwest.org or LFNW.org or .com? .org for more information about the conference. It's free to attend. You just have to make it to Bellingham. It's not that hard to do. And if you're literally in the Pacific Northwest area of North America, you just kind of have to. It's what I like to call a moral imperative. But anyway, there you go. James, thanks for hanging out today with me, buddy.
Thanks, Brian. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. You're absolutely correct about that. Also, the lights shifting, and so now these dots are showing up on your shoulder, and it's really cool looking. I'm somewhat saddened that we can't wait until it's right in your eyes. There we go. That's the good stuff. All right, everybody. That's enough Thursday for this week. See you guys later.